Thank you, everyone, and thanks to our panelists today. As we saw in that video, there's a direct link between the world's farmers, climate change, and our global food supply. Right now, 45 million people around the world are on the verge of famine, and that, of course, is the extreme expression of food insecurity. But when you look at what happened between 2019 and 2022, in terms of the amount of people that have experienced some level of food insecurity globally, it went from 135 million people in 53 countries in 2019 to 345 million in 82 countries in 2022, just in the span of those 3 years. So clearly things have taken a turn for the worse, it seems. But we're here to talk about solutions. And smallholder farmers are part of the solution. They are the principal growers and suppliers of the food that goes to the poorest people in the world. But as we also saw in that video, climate change is really causing trouble for them. So I want to start with you, Wangari, because you're a farmer. You have been working to help other smallholder farmers get set up with your organization. So talk to us about the challenges that you and your peers are facing and some of the positive outcomes as well. Let's try to make this a conversation that focuses on solutions and a call to action if we can.
Thank you so much. First of all is to acknowledge the win that you are allowing a farmer in the room, and a small-scale farmer at that. It's mostly when we think about farming, we think about large tracts of land, but that's not the system that we have in Africa. So for me being in this podium, for me being acknowledged for the award yesterday, that's quite a big win. But then there's still some work to be done in terms of challenges, and number one is financing. Agriculture is regarded as one of the high-risk sectors, and commercial banks are not as willing and forthcoming with finances to try and push that into thinking of it as a business, because the produce is also seasonal. We don't get our monthly income, we get seasonal income. So if you're farming potatoes, you will only get paid after 4 months, and then there's climate change, and then that means that you have to go talk to your bank manager to explain what climate change is. Yeah. Number 3, I would say gender. There are very few women in the agricultural space. Case in point.
Right.
Anyway, I'm joking. Yes, yet women make decisions. Everyone in the audience will agree, women are the ones who make decisions on what is going to be eaten, what is in the menu, what choices to make in terms of economic challenges. Are we gonna change from wheat flour to this brand and to this other thing, but then they are not decision makers, and inviting them to the table can be quite a success as well.
And Wangari, I forgot to mention congratulations on your award yesterday. We're all very proud and extremely impressed with everything you've done. Alvaro, I was telling you backstage that it's always a little intimidating to talk about a topic that you're not very familiar with people that dominate the topic, like yourself. I was reading that only 1.7% of climate funding worldwide goes to smallholder farmers in developing countries. We were just saying that these farmers are part of the solution. So, you reach more than 500 million people through IFAD, especially in rural areas in developing countries. Why is it important to prioritize these smallholder farmers?
Well, thank you very much. I'm far from an expert. I think the experts are the ones who are actually on the ground and on the field when we visit and on the projects, and are the ones who are actually going through the challenges. So Wangari, who is a very impressive farmer and businesswoman, you can see the challenges, which are access to finance, access to land, access to inputs, and many times that financing is not coming. So I'm more the advocate of many of the voices when we are talking to the leaders about the importance of global farms. And small farms, we're talking about under 2 hectares, which means like around less than 5 football fields, so that we have US football fields for people who are from here, from the States, so they have an idea of what we're talking about. And we see actually, when you see the images and you see the visibility, it's not like you're in a land where actually everything is easy. You're talking about degraded hillsides, you're talking about low-lying coastal areas, you're talking about deserts. So actually very difficult places too. And I think the important part is how we, and this is the conversation out there, how do we manage to also support the intimate relationship between this climate financing, how to adapt to these extreme weather events, and small farming, which is actually the ones that are producing the food. 80% of the food in Africa and in Asia is produced by women like Wangari.
And you just mentioned two very important things, climate change, and of course also the other force driving this food insecurity is our geopolitics, our geopolitical situation right now. C.D., PepsiCo has committed $100 million to the Zero Hunger private sector pledge. Can you talk to us about what that commitment means in tangible terms? It's a large sum of money, but what does it mean more concretely? And also, what would you say to your peers in the private sector that are planning to join, or even more importantly, that have not considered joining this pledge?
No, thanks for the opportunity. I guess I want to address something, I won't call it an elephant in the room, but why would PepsiCo, one of the world's largest food and beverage companies, sort of make a $100 million commitment to agriculture, to zero hunger? And it's really because at the end of the day, PepsiCo is an agriculture company. We're rooted in agriculture. So you may know products like Pepsi and Gatorade, but at the end of the day, products like Lay's is potatoes. Products like Doritos are corn. Products like Quaker Oats, this is about oat farmers. So the lifeblood of our company is rooted in agriculture. So from a sustainable agricultural agenda and from a philanthropic agenda, support to smallholder agriculture is literally what makes the company perform. It's really critical to who we are. We made a strategic transformation in the company to put positive agriculture, positive value chains, and positive choices at the center of how we're going to transform the company, how we're going to operate within planetary boundaries. And so this $100 million private sector commitment pledge is yet but a responsibility for us to really do more good for more people, and for the planet. And so that dollar figure is one thing, but with this dollar figure, with bringing all the capabilities of the company, we're going to support 50 million people having access, sustainable access to nutritious foods. We're going to improve the lives and livelihoods of 250,000 smallholder farmers who are in our supply chain. And so there are tangible actions with the dollar figure, but it really is about PepsiCo being positive, working in communities, working with and through, not doing things to communities, but working with and through them and letting those smallholder farmers lead us into a positive future where we're operating within planetary boundaries.
That's great, and setting the bar also for others in the private sector. Ed, I come from a country that's explained by contrasts, by extremes. In Mexico, we have one of the highest child obesity rates in the world, but we also have acute malnutrition. And I know Citi recently released a report about the estimated impact of malnutrition on the global economy. Can you tell us more about the findings of that report?
Sure. So as heartbreaking as some of the statistics you mentioned are on a person-to-person basis, the economic toll of malnutrition and food insecurity is really staggering. We estimate the economic impact is about $3.5 trillion in economic harm per year caused by food insecurity, malnourishment, stunted growth, and all the lost opportunities, and that's the GDP of many countries combined. And one of the other challenges we face is that every major thing the world is going through, whether it's geopolitical, the war in Ukraine, whether it's the environment with climate change, whether it's macroeconomic with inflation, it just makes the problem worse. But like all problems, there are solutions, but they will cost money. And we estimate that if the world just collectively invested $40 billion annually by 2030, you could reverse the $4.5 trillion loss and actually create a $5.7 trillion gain in economic activity, not in total, but annually. So that is a 15 times return on investment every year, which is something that we don't think the world should wait on, and we're certainly using our balance sheet to do our part.
Not cheap, but cheaper than the alternative, certainly. Ed, let's talk about big ideas, because I think we're all here to focus on solutions, right? Journalists like myself usually get criticized because we focus too much on the negative, so I won't do that for the remaining 10 minutes of our panel. Alvaro, you have big ideas. I heard you say once that you can end hunger and poverty in rural communities. That's a big idea, an ambitious idea. What more does IFAD need to fight? What do you need more to fight food insecurity, and what specific climate adaptations could that funding help provide to smallholder farmers?
So we do believe that it's not about only managing and poverty and hunger, but actually on eliminating it. It's very clear that unless we invest in the resilience and improving livelihoods, which means increasing the income of many of the rural communities, we're not going to end hunger and poverty. I mean, we can continue saving lives, but that's not enough. We clearly need to provide the opportunities to many of these, I would say, rural women, youth, that actually without this small, or I could say, pushes to really support them in terms of financing, in terms of technology, we cannot really end poverty. And poverty is located in rural areas. 80% of our poverty is located in rural areas. I think we really need to make sure that we are providing them with the actual financing. For us, that means currently showing also results. We are funded partially by governments, but also by the private sector. We have also been the first fund to get credit rating, to get pension money. But for us, it's very important to show those results. So actually, we want to go from 26 million people per year in the rural communities, whereby we increase their income, to 40 million per year. We're showing also every cycle 36 million that have access to markets, like Wangari was mentioning. Resilience, we go through household service. And the most important part is the impact, so changing those lives. In terms, perhaps very quickly, of climate adaptation, we also know that whenever you invest in early warning systems, even only 24 hours can save 30% of the lives, can save 30% of the cost. So it's very important, submergible irrigation systems. It's very clear that we will not be able to continue with the current trend, which is very, very dire, unless we start massively starting to finance.
And Wangari, the awards are fine, the public recognition is great, but what can we do? What can global citizens, what can young activists do to support farmers like yourself and the organizations that you're supporting and creating?
I think for us, it's to ask the question of how does help look for you, Wangari? How does help look for you, small-scale farmer? Because they also have their vision and their idea, and then try and see how you can marry that. But just to add on just a little bit to the call of action, organizations like IFAD and Pepsi and all the other organizations that are really coming to Africa, we are starting to feel the progress and the transformation of before and after, because now we are thinking more globally. We are not just thinking about feeding ourselves, we are thinking about creating a business around that food system.
And C.D., we were talking about the $100 million pledge, but what is the PepsiCo Foundation doing to help farmers like Wangari, like specifically?
No, it's a great question. You know, you said big ideas, and so there's a big idea, and that really is, it's a no-brainer idea too. That's investing in women and investing in women smallholder farmers. FAO recently had a report that said if we focus on the gender gap in farm productivity and in employment, we can increase the GDP by $1 trillion and move 45 million people out of poverty, out of food insecurity, by investing in women and closing that gender gap. And so at PepsiCo, at the PepsiCo Foundation, we do write checks, but we really want to bring about change. And when we see somebody transforming communities, it really fires us up. So this past 2 days, I've actually been fired up because I've heard from a female farmer who's transforming her community, who told me about 100,000 people that she has on her Facebook platform or her online platform, 20,000 direct implementations. So Wangari, you want to know what PepsiCo and the PepsiCo Foundation and what the private sector can do for you? We can invest in you. So I'm so proud to announce that the PepsiCo Foundation is providing you with $10,000 for farmers on fire. You're a farmer on fire, and we're fired up to support you.
Felicidades, Wangari. Congratulations. There you go. I said it's going to be a call to action, and PepsiCo is putting their money where their mouth is. So thank you so much.
We're trying to walk the talk, and literally there's a farmer on fire here, and we want to support that. We want to bring some firewood to the change that she's making in communities.
Thank you.
Wangari, I'm sure you... I'm not gonna ask you what you feel because you're already showing us that, and we appreciate the honesty. But if you want to say something, please go ahead.
I want to say thank you so much. And for me, it's a surprise that we were sitting with you and you're gonna ambush me in front of the cameras. So thank you so much. This will lead us into the right direction of making sure that we're empowering other people around us to also be food sufficient and also be economically empowered. And above all, the young girls and the women in our communities who are trying to figure out who they are. And this kind of support goes a long way towards that goal.
Wonderful. Thank you again to PepsiCo, Citi, and Wangari. Ed, we have a couple of minutes left, and I know you wear many hats at Citi. One of those is being the head of the Citi Foundation. They have a new $25 million initiative to spur innovation in fighting for food security. How are you specifically doing that, and what is the 25 million going to, not just from a foundation perspective, but how is also the business involved, because after all, you're a global bank?
Yeah, I'll cover both sides of the coin. About a year and a half ago, we were challenged by our CEO, Jane Fraser, to have our foundation do more in this area. And frankly, it was a new area for us. And so we thought the best thing we should do is challenge others and open up to the best ideas. So we allocated $25 million, running basically a competition. We will fund 50 organizations at $500,000 each. And we closed the applications about 2 weeks ago. We got 1,000 applications and proposals from 80 different countries. And we think it's a good use of our grant funds because there's a lot of exciting ideas going out there about preventing food waste by better inventory management, synthetic proteins, fermentation, insect proteins as fertilizer. So there's a ton going on. We don't have the answers. We just want to help catalyze their development and bring them to help bring them into market. From our private sector perspective, we started a social finance team a couple of years ago, and one of the focuses is on helping us meet our $1 trillion sustainable finance goal. And we are supporting smallholder farmers globally. In Brazil, in India, we are helping dairy farmers pay their suppliers. In Nigeria, we're doing harvest advances. But it's not just about the money you support and the financing, it's about the form of money. One of the most impactful programs we had was with the 1 Acre Fund in Kenya, where we converted loan repayments to a mobile payment platform. Because cash is not king, and if you take cash out of the system, you lose less money through fraud, corruption, and other means. So it's not just about the financial resources, it's about the financial infrastructure.
Ed, C.D., Wangari, Alvaro, muchas gracias. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. And in the words of Wangari, I think we all need to understand that food is not just a basic need, it's the ultimate need. So thanks again, and thank you to our audience today.